Hey everyone, this is William Moore, and you're watching Beyond the Ties That Bind. On today's program, I want to discuss something that is going to be coming up in a few months. There's going to be millions of people heading to the polls to cast their vote for the candidate they feel can best rule over them and be their next tyrant. Had a friend over the other day and we were discussing voting, and I started remembering things after he left about people I'd had discussions with about voting. People saying, well, you have to vote the lesser of two evils. I mean, you can't just walk away from the system. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You got to go in, even if you don't like the candidates, you got to vote for the one that closely represents your belief system, your worldview. No, you don't. You don't have to vote at all. Voting for the lesser of two evils, that's not a solid platform because you still have evil. That's not a good philosophy to have, to vote for the lesser of two evils. People are saying, well, we still need to be part of the system. We still need to, engage in the system. I had one person tell me that they went into the voting booth and they held their breath and they voted for Trump, even though they didn't like Trump. I've had people tell me that about Romney. People tell me that about McCain. People tell me that about George Bush, that they went into the voting booth and they voted for the person, even though they didn't like the person, and saying, well, what else can you do? Well, don't vote. Don't be a part of the system. Saying that you're going to vote for the lesser of two evils is like going into an ice cream shop, and in the ice cream shop, they have butter pecan strawberry. You don't like butter pecan, you don't like strawberry. So what do? You leave the ice cream shop and you go somewhere else where they're serving the flavor you like, such as freedom. That's my preferred flavor. So you have these people that they feel that they're forced into making this decision, butter pecan or strawberry. I don't like butter pecan. I don't like strawberry. Then you have the people who come in and say, well, to stay engaged in the system and participate in the system, we need to, you know, vote for a third party if we don't like the candidates that the RNC or DNC are putting forward. No, you don't have to vote third party either, because voting third party is like going into that ice cream shop again and saying, you know what, I don't like butter pecan, but I like it a little bit better than strawberry. Do you have any chocolate syrup? So you get the chocolate syrup, you put it on your butter pecan, you stir it up a little, take some bites. Ugh. Tastes a little bit better, but it doesn't taste all that good. Or you like the strawberry, so you take the strawberry, put some, chocolate syrup, sprinkles, marshmallows, caramel, whatever, you stir it up. Ugh, still doesn't taste good, not palatable. That's what choosing a third party candidate is like. Because you're still going to have statism. You're still going to have both houses of Congress ran by Republicans and Democrats anyway. So a third party candidate's not going to get anything accomplished whatsoever, but they're still your ruler. It's still statism. And we don't need rulers. I believe deep down that most people want freedom. They want to be left alone. They don't want any infringement upon their freedoms. Um, However, uh, everyone, for the most part, 90% of the population's been brainwashed into believing that they have to take part in this exercise in futility, this voting process, and you don't have to take part in it whatsoever. I mean, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are both private organizations. So when you are participating in the primaries or the caucuses, you're participating in an event hosted by a private organization. And the United States itself, since 1871, officially since 1871, unofficially since 1787, is a corporation in itself. No different than McDonald's, no different than Walmart, no different than Apple, no different than Microsoft, no different than Texas Instruments, no different than Boeing. It's a corporation. The only difference in the United States government and those other corporations is the United States government operates under coercion, threat of force. So these are private organizations. And I'm going to read something here from this is Independent Voter News, and it's from May 2nd, 2017, concerning the court case between the DNC and Bernie Sanders supporters, to show you that it is on record a private organization, the DNC, and the Republican Party no different. But in the transcript for last week's hearing in Wilding versus DNC Services, released Friday, DNC attorneys assert that the party has every right to favor one candidate or another, despite their party rules that state otherwise, because, after all, they are a private corporation and they can change their rules if they want. Right there. The argument is not without merit. In fact, it is a legally sound argument that has rarely been overcome in the court of law. So courts are hesitant to get involved in that political thicket. And it's a private corporation. It's a club. And like George Carlin said, you ain't in it. So you also have this where an attorney, Mr. Spiva, speaking for the DNC, says, there is no right to, just by virtue of making a donation, to enforce the party's internal rules, said DNC attorney Bruce Spiva. And there's no right to not have your candidate disadvantaged or have another candidate advantaged. There is no contractual obligation here. It's all a big club. These are private organizations that then sponsor candidates on the national public level to run for the highest office in the land. Don't tell me that Trump went in like Messiah went into the court of the Gentiles and started flipping over tables and turning the tables over and just turning everything around on the RNC. He did not do so. A lot of people say, well, you know, Trump went in, he went in like a wrecking ball. And he went in and tore the Republican Party up and was an outsider and took it over. No, he did not. Don't believe it. That was all political theater. You're talking about a man who had a reality television show that was based upon theater, based upon drama. And he carried that same type of attitude, that same script basically with him to the RNC. He created drama for everyone to tune into every night. If this man was actually for the people, the media would not have given him almost 50 times the media coverage that they gave any other candidate. Look it up. The media was in his pocket. He was in the media's pocket. It was a scripted reality television show. The organizations, RNC, DNC, they decide who runs. Case in point, last time, Bernie Sanders. His voters were disenfranchised. People who wanted socialism. But anyway, go back to 2008, 2012, Ron Paul, the message of freedom, the message of getting out of entangling alliances with foreign powers, getting out of the business of intervening into the affairs of other nations. Things that people really believe in: freedom, no taxation, getting rid of the IRS. But he could not get any kind of traction whatsoever. He couldn't get the support he needed to become a viable candidate. Why? Because he wasn't part of the club. And a lot of people say, well, that changed with Donald Trump. No, it did not change with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is no Ron Paul. Ron Paul is a man of character, and no, I would not vote for Ron Paul if he ran now. I've evolved past that. I don't want a ruler. I don't want to see government exist whatsoever. I believe that government needs to be abolished. So anyway, these people are going to vote, but nothing changes. You still have the central banks. You still have the military industrial complex. You still have America invading other nations to control the other nations' natural resources. And so nothing has changed. Donald Trump's not going to do away with the Federal Reserve like so many of you say that he's going to. He's not going to do it. If he was, he would have already tried to do something like that. But no, he's not. Um, anyway, you still have the military industrial complex. You still have these drone strikes, missile strikes, where people are being killed daily by the United States government. So nothing's changed. A lot of people believe that if you voted for Trump, you were sticking it to the man. Well, no, you were voting for the man. That's all there is to it. A lot of people say, well, we had to vote for Trump. It was the lesser of two evils. Well, pragmatic voting always results in a downward trend in the quality of candidates. And boy, did we see that last election. Politicians aren't going to change if they know that you're going to vote for them anyway. If anything, they're going to get worse because the American public has proved over the years that they will vote for anything. Um, the problem of making bad choices is perpetuated. The nation continues to deteriorate until, the choices that you're left with are Stalin and Hitler or Clinton and Trump. You don't have to vote. When you go into the ice cream store and they only have two flavors and you despise both flavors, you say, no, thank you, I'm going elsewhere. Even if they try and force you, even if they have some type of guard in there with a gun, you just say, no, I'm not going to. It's out of principle. People need to stand for their principles. I mean, come on, Trump was not a threat to the RNC. He was not a threat. He's still not a threat to the establishment. Wilbur Ross is the Secretary of Commerce. Wilbur Ross is a Rothschild bitch. Steve Mnuchin, he's a close friend of George Soros. This man is Secretary of the Treasury, which we really don't have a Treasury. We have a Federal Reserve. But anyway, these men are they are globalist. And they're in Trump's cabinet. And then you have Mike Pompeo. This guy wrote a book on how to lie. I mean, this guy is, evil personified. Then you had a military advisor, John Bolton. I mean, come on, these are neocons. It's the same people advising this president that have advised the last four presidents. I mean, come on, wake up, America. Shake off the shackles of your brainwashing. If you don't like what I'm saying, go watch Looney Tunes or Breaking Bad bloopers on another YouTube channel. I don't want people here that suffer from cognitive dissonance. I don't want people here that don't know how to think critically, that just accept the brainwashing they receive from the mainstream news media. I don't want that type of person watching this. I want someone who wants to know the truth, who wants to listen, somebody who can think critically, somebody who can defend a position logically, somebody who can work off of a plane or of logic, in the realm of logic, be able to take data and go through that data intelligently and come to a conclusion, a truthful conclusion. I mean, politics is entertainment. It's heavily scripted. It's ratings driven. And here we had the man who had a successful reality television show, The Apprentice, and he's running for president. You don't think that he was bringing that type of talent, that type of production with him into his presidential campaign? I mean, it's basically an exercise in how to sell a product, and in this case, that product is a presidential candidate, and it's lately image over substance. Clinton, she had no substance. Trump, he has no substance, and these people run together off the camera. It's nothing more than WWE. They might fight and bicker out in public, but behind, closed doors, they're having a drink and laughing at everybody that's going to cast a vote for them. So, you know, it's like George Carlin said once again, it's a big club. You ain't in it. The United States of America is a corporation, and then you have two private corporations controlling who's going to run for president, and nothing changes when one of them wins. And then if your candidate wins, you can go, hoorah, because guess what? Now you get to have your candidate in who's going to control you or control your enemies for the next 8 years. And then when the other side wins, then they're going to control you by force for the next 8 years and make you accept things that you don't agree with for the next 4 to 8 years. So, um, and that's basically, voting when you vote for someone. And by casting a vote, you're saying that you agree with the outcome of the election, no matter what it is. That if the opposing side wins, you accept that person as being your master for the next 4 years. If your side wins, of course, you agree with that person being your master for the next 4 years. And local elections, oh, no. These tax measures that are put on ballots for schools, for police, or, well, revenue generation officers, for fire departments, for libraries, for parks, all of that, that is thievery. Nothing more than thievery. When you vote for a tax proposal for a school, then you are voting that those people who do not favor that tax proposal to pay for it. And it is done through coercion. If they don't pay for it, then somebody's going to show up to their house to confiscate their goods. And if they resist, then they'll be put in jail. If they resist being taken hostage, kidnapped and taken hostage, then they'll be killed. So you use the ballot as a bullet and you force your neighbors to pay for something that they may not want to pay for. And a lot of people don't want to pay for tax increases right now because it's getting harder and harder as the days go by for families to make it from month to month, week to week, day to day. And so you're forcing these people to pay for your pet projects. Well, if you believe in those pet projects, you pay for them, leave the rest of us alone. Um, you know, Voting has been corrupt from the beginning. Go back to George Washington, 1757. He ran for the House of Burgess. The first time he lost. The second time he said, I got an idea. I'm going to give everybody a big mug of whiskey. Everybody who votes for me, they get a big mug of whiskey. Now, whiskey back in that day was currency. Whiskey was used as money. So he was purchasing their votes. And he did it in both of his presidential campaigns as well, in the presidential elections. He gave everyone a mug of whiskey for their vote. So it's always been corrupt, but now even more so corrupt. And if you think the bankers that have controlled the United States of America since 1913 were going to give up their power in 2016 with the election of Trump, I have got some oceanfront property in Arizona and Missouri and Arkansas to sell you. Please write me. I've got a lot of stuff to sell you. If you actually believe that these bankers that control most of the world's wealth, I believe Jacob Rothschild, $500 trillion. That's like 93% of the world's wealth and money. He controls that. You think that he was going to give up that power? You think that, I mean, come on, it goes down to what Samuel Clemens said. If, voting mattered, they wouldn't let us do it. It would be illegal. Which brings me to another quote by Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. And then I'm going to end this, but, and this is very true. Um, People have been brainwashed. They accept what's handed down to them from the government schools, the indoctrination centers, government indoctrination centers, the government or state-run media. what they hear on the radio, in social circles, and they don't investigate anything anymore. And if you're out there and you are a Trump supporter, dyed in the wool Trump supporter, will not, look at anything critically, then this quote is about you. If you're a dyed in the wool Democrat, Bernie Sanders supporter, this quote, it definitely is about you. It describes you to a T. In religion and politics, people's beliefs and convictions are in almost every case gotten at second hand and without examination from authorities who have not themselves examined the questions at issue but have taken them at second hand from other non-examiners whose opinions about them were not worth a brass farthing. I'm going to read it again. I love that quote. In religion and politics, people's beliefs and convictions are in almost every case gotten at second hand and without examination from authorities who have not themselves examined the questions at issue, but have taken them at second hand from other non-examiners whose opinions about them were not worth a brass farthing. There you have it, people. Most people vote because they're told to vote. They don't question the system. They don't research. They don't question anything. They just go along. It's like lemmings. They're just going along, and then eventually they're going to go off that cliff. People need to do some research. Read about the history of the nation, the birth of the nation, the formulation of the government back in 1787, what happened in 1861 and before, how, the communists took over this nation way back then. People think that the communists came around after World War II and, these people were getting into government. These people were getting into all the universities throughout the nation in the 1950s. No, it was it was so long before that. It was in the 1850s, actually, in the 1860s. And then in 1871, the United States became a corporation whose charter is held by the crown. And this is all public record. The government doesn't even hide it. But most people, not most of you watching, most people don't want to hear that. They don't want to know it. And I'm telling you what, that corporation was not going to give over control to an outsider. And if you think so, then you suffer from cognitive dissonance and you don't know how to think critically. Trump didn't come in like a wrecking ball. He was chosen. If you think Rothschild and the Rockefellers and all these banking interests were going to step aside for this populist candidate and for a so-called people's candidate, you've got another thing coming. Until next time, this is William Moore with Beyond the Ties That Bind. And remember, don't vote because it's futile. Your vote doesn't count. The only thing that counts is your stand for freedom. Peace.